All right, well, welcome back to the shop. I'm your host, K-Man. Today we are going to be working on putting my 6-inch suspension lift on my 1998 Club Car golf cart. I went on Amazon and I bought the cheapest one I could find. And this thing here I bought, I want to say it was less than 300 bucks for the kit. So not bad. I will say that I was kind of surprised at what I got. It actually impressed a little bit. So I mean, you got your mounting plate for the bottom part. This is like 3/16 steel. You have tubular A-arms here. The spindles themselves, you know, these parts here, that's 1/2 inch plate right there. So pretty impressed with the overall. The back is just some blocks. You're just going to disconnect the axle from the spring and put those underneath it. But it comes with all the hardware you need. You've got your what they call tie rod ends. We call them heim joints. But anyway, got these as well. So pretty much everything you need in here. The instructions are actually really fairly well written. I mean, I kind of understand what I'm doing. And I'll be honest with you, I've never done one of these before. So we're going to learn this together. So yeah, so let's go ahead and get this thing started. That's not one to come off. There's a dust shield on the other side of that. I'm not really sure how that thing's supposed to come off. All right, I finally got it off. I had to clean out. I sprayed the inside of the thing. What happened is this has probably never been off of here. Somebody tried to repack it, but I guarantee you didn't take it off. This spindle is kind of ate up right in here, and that inside race did not want to come off. So these things do just pop out. So I'll clean that up before I put it back together, and then we'll repack that. Well, this is not going back together tonight. Yeah, you see all them bearings in there? Yeah, they're not supposed to be like that. Yeah, a bunch of them fell right out. So I'm going to have to order a kit or bearings to get this fixed. But we can keep pressing forward and go ahead and get all of that done. The next step is going to be to remove this bolt that holds the shock on. They say, well, you don't have to remove the shock, but I'm replacing these, so I'm going to go ahead and pull them completely out. But then after that, it just says, you know, have at it, and basically you're going to start pulling out, you know, you're going to disconnect the steering rod right here, and then you can go ahead and disconnect this bolt here, the spindle, from the spring, and then we're going to get in there and we're going to take out the upper little A-arm it has in here, take all that out, and then we'll go to the other side and do the same thing. But at least you can see how this is all going to come apart here. It's pretty straightforward. Try to get you in here as close as I could. Oh, come on, I got a hammer right over there, and I'm using one. There, I have to do that. Oh wow! So somebody decided that instead of changing the the shock absorbers, they just stuck more bushings on there. Now some of this hardware in the instructions, they ask you to hang on to it because you're going to use it again. Yeah, I don't remember which ones are which, so we're going to kind of set these down to the side in this pile. I know I got to use the shock one. I really don't want to mess that up. There she goes. You don't want to hit on the end there too much. You mess the threads up. And you will be in a bind. Well, that's pretty much it. We're gonna hop on the other side, and then once we get the other side done, then we'll come in here and we'll worry about this. All right, so the next part's pretty straightforward. We're going to remove these 4 bolts and drop this down along with that. I believe we're gonna leave this plate here in place, I think. Let me double check that. Nope, it does say remove all of that. So let's see here. Well, there's no sense in removing that if I'm removing all of it. So that means just undo it from the top, right? Maybe? Let's see what happens. Seems to be 4 bolts. Oh, I'm gonna have to take it off anyway. I can't get to these over here, so we gotta pull these off first. Y'all see what's coming, right? I'm gonna drop this thing on my head. Oh, I'm like, why isn't it going in? There we go. Now we can get to all 4 of those bolts. Ooh. All right, I got hardware everywhere. All right, it seems the next step is to put this big honking plate on using the bolts we just took off. So they should line straight up. Now they say they recommend using using a jack to hold it in position, but you know, I got an arm, right? That goes, yeah. So it really only goes on one way. That seems to be the case. All right. Good to know. All right, it says tighten it up, but it doesn't give you specs, so snug +2, that's what we're gonna go with. Snug +2. How is that I'm getting dirt in my eyes and I'm wearing safety glasses? You else ever notice that? One, 2. 1, 2. And I think I'm gonna come back after a week or so, hit these again. 1, 2. Let go of my wrench, thank you. 1. Oops, that moved. 2, there we go. All right, next part says to install the upper A-arm, and they go in like this, so they're kind of like the little L shape. It faces, you know, like that, and the opposite one faces the opposite direction, obviously. All right, so there's a 5-inch bolt. It's gonna go in there, which is just barely gonna go. All right, so honestly, I can't tell if I need to put a washer. That's not right. That's where the shot goes. Does the picture really tell me that? Hold on, I got to look. Yep, I grabbed it the wrong way. All right, so it goes like this. So you got a washer on the outside here. And then there's a washer on the outside, and then your little nylon nut. Again, no torque specs, so We're gonna go tight plus 2, I think. Ooh, that tightened right up. That'll work. Right? Okay. Now it tells me to put the shock absorber back on. And this is pretty straightforward too. We're going to use the top bolts that we took off. These are all 13 millimeter, which I think I grabbed. Yes, I did. Or I should say not all. The bottom one's 13. Okay, and then the top one's back to that 14 again. Here she goes, and she's free. She seems to go up all too fast, but it's doing something. All right, forgive the rain noise in the background, but I think I gave too much praise too soon. Look at this. So here they tell you, remove everything, move the A-arms, you know, do all that, okay? The very next step, it just says, attach main assembly using hardware retained from step 3 and tighten. Use a floor jack recommended to hold assembly. They're talking about this whole thing right there. Guess what? They don't tell you how to put that together. And this plate right here doesn't exist. You have to add that later if you want. So it's blocking any hope of you knowing exactly how this is supposed to hook together. If I flip over, no, again, no, this thing's in the way. So you really can't tell how that thing's supposed to be mounted back together. Yeah, I guess we have to figure it out ourselves. All right, so I reached out to the supplier on the Jungle website. They got it from somebody else. I found this thing also on eBay. They're like, yeah, that's all the instructions we have. So they didn't get anything. So went looking online, and I did find a similar style setup from a different manufacturer, probably the same manufacturer, different name. The hard part is this right here. The drawing just doesn't show you how this attaches. And so after looking at it, there is a pretty long bolt here. So what you have to do is you have to take this bolt off, and then on this plate, there's a spot in the center where that bolts onto. So that's really the hardest part about it. The rest of it's pretty straightforward. So we will go ahead and pull this off. This is our 16 millimeter. And I'm doing this backwards. Of course I am. Still tension on it. There it goes. Okay. And if you look at it, it does in fact mount that direction upside down. We'll just slap this back in there. Look at that. Fits perfectly. Come on. Yeah, I'm not sure why they just don't show a simple picture from the bottom showing you where that thing mounts to. That doesn't make no sense to me. But you know, logic and some people, those two things don't go together all the time. And I'm pretty sure this, just crank this down until the two springs are touching again, because they're going to be separated. And you loosen that or take that bolt off. And again, no specs on how tight it needs to be. It does, however, need to be square before you tighten it down. And there are some little tabs on here you can see that show you where that thing should be sitting. So let's see if we can tighten this from the top now. So this is how the thing's going to sit in here. Normally, your A-arms will be like this, inverted. So we're going to go ahead and flip it over so it makes it easier to put together. So flip everything over. So we're going to make sure that this all points the same way. One thing the instructions do say is that I guess you're going to, nope, that ain't going to work. I was just fixing to say, you think you're going to reuse these, but those ain't long enough. All right, crisis averted. It's in the other bag. So they are there. So obviously just a washer. I think I'm going to put it in so that the bolt or the nut part is going to be on the inside. So you got bolt, washer, goes through, washer, and then nylon nut again. Again, they don't say how tight it needs to be. So snug +2, snug +1, something like that. We're gonna go snug +1. Yeah. It just screwed that up. Those are supposed to be on the other side of the spring. That was brilliant. Sometimes you get ahead of yourself. Sometimes you just don't pay attention. So that goes here on top. Pay attention. Wow, that was pretty bad. Now why are there 2 holes? Oh, it's universal. So 2 holes, 1 for each side. I got you. Okay. All right, so the next part is going to be installing let's see if I can show you this real quick. Installing these little spacers here. I don't know what they even call these things, but it's basically a bolt, some washers, and a bunch of bushings. So it goes bolt, washer, bushing, then goes through. I'm going to assume the little raised part on the bushing goes in. I really don't know. We'll kind of put it together. But the cup part always goes toward the bushing. Okay. And then there is a spacer here that goes between the bushing, and the bearing, a washer. Let me show you that way. And then we put on another washer, another bushing, then we go through, another bushing, another washer, and then try like heck to get the nut to start, which it's not going to. Yeah, I can't even get a thread on it. So what does that mean? So that means that most likely the raised part on the bushing goes toward the bushing. Maybe? Let's try that. All right, so once again, bushing, that, spacer, washer, bushing, through the hole, bushing, that. Did that give me enough this time? Yes. All right, so the answer to the question is yes. Now I would venture to say this doesn't need to be extremely tight, but enough to get the nylon bushing part. Let's flip this over. Yeah, so we want enough of the locking nylon on there that it's going to hold it and lock it into place. So put a little bit of compression on the bushings. I've got enough in there. So you can see that, just a couple threads. And that's probably good enough. So now that we got this whole, what they call main suspension assembly put together, now we can go and put that back in. I am going to agree with them that, yeah, this is probably going to be a whole lot easier if I take a jack from the floor and jack it up into place, because I I don't know, that thing's probably, I mean, if you had 2 people, not a big deal. I mean, it probably weighs 15 pounds, 18 pounds, 15 pounds, something like that. I mean, not a lot, but 1 arm, bolt through. Yeah, let's see what happens. Made it a little more difficult on myself because I already got the A-arm mounted over here. Or the top A-arm, I should say. Not only A-arm. Let's just call it suspension arm. So next part is to install these tie rods ends. I went ahead and stuck some Never Sees on there. Probably not a big deal, but so this will establish how far out your tires stick. But here's the thing, these are 1/2-inch bolts basically, so I wouldn't advise them going all the way out all the time because, yeah, you could run the risk of bending that. Oh, there must be another nut or bolt on the back then, right? I wondered why there was 2 more of these nuts. So one thing you're going to do once you get this thing all bolted up is you're going to use these to establish your camber and adjustment. So you want a little bit of leeway down here, and then obviously a little bit on top, because when you adjust it, you're going to be adjusting primarily the top one to get it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to leave about, I guess that's about 1/2 inch or so exposed. And we're just going to snug it up. We're not going to tighten them up just yet because we're going to have to come back and set toe anyway, our camber anyway. All right, so now we're going to mount in our spindle here. Use these big, like 14mm bolts to go in. Well, I'm not sure which size Allen wrench this is. Oh, wait a minute. That's just 3/8. Well, 3/8 works. So we got that. So the next part, let me check you over here, is going to be installing steering. Hopefully. And I did not replace these, but whatever. Probably should have, but go ahead and hammer these down in there and go ahead and tighten them down and then lock them up. All right, so that back bearing disintegrated, so we're gonna try to tap out this. Well, check it, everything fell out. Let's get some gloves on before we make a complete mess of ourselves. All right, good news is the other race came right out. Bad news is my local supply house thinks these things are made of gold. Here we are, end of March 2025. They wanted $10 for the race. Just the race, $10. Are you kidding me? $10. I mean, yeah, I mean, it was like with tax, like $27 for 1 bearing and 1 race. That's it. Unfortunately, you can buy these things online a whole lot cheaper, but I need to get this thing up and running. I don't have it. I can't get room for it to sit in my shop. And what the crap? Something's not right here. Oh. Okay, I was fixing to freak out because the idea of this is quite a bit bigger, but there are some, let me show you there. See those little, that right there? So the bearing actually, or the race, fits down inside that. So there's a little bit of a gap there. So yeah, I started freaking out. I'm like, hey man, that sure just slides right down in there. All right, well, I guess it just slides in there. It doesn't really, I thought I got to hammer it in normally, but yep, that just popped right in. All right, let's go and reinstall our dust cap. Okay, so this should be pretty straightforward. All right, Right. Now this thing should be tighter than it was when I had it on there. But when I took it off, because I took it off, it was finger tight. All right, let me go grab a wrench. That's snug right there. That's better. All right. And turns freely. Still a little snug. I think that's good. All right, let's do the other side. Oh yeah, it looks good. So in order to set caster, all we need is a framing square of some kind. Put it on here and take a look where we're at. All right, so you can see here, I've got a little bit of a gap down there. I did tell you wrong earlier. The adjustment is actually in the bottom because you have the two nuts there. And so that's where your adjustment is. If I go all the way in, or this one case, I need to come out. So if I didn't have enough room, I would actually have to take this apart and turn this in my hand to adjust it and then start over again. But I've got enough room to come out now to get this. So let's go ahead and move that out some. Okay, so we will loosen up the back one because we got to come out and about 3/8 of an inch. So that is, let's try a 19 deep socket. That may be easier to deal with. So what it is, we loosen up the back nut, gave ourselves some room, and then we can start adjusting the outside nut until we get where we need to be. Roll around a little bit. Okay, closer. Just a little bit more. The rolling's supposed to help it kind of settle. There we go. All right, now we are dead on, right where we need to be. So now we can come in here and we will tighten up this back nut and lock it down. All right, let's do that to the other side. What do you think about that? I'm pretty sure they call that a Carolina squat, right? Okay, maybe not. All right, so we got these things spun around, and what they ask you to do is to, or tell you to do, is go ahead and jack it up, and then you're gonna put jack stands underneath the frame itself, and then you're gonna leave this jack underneath the axle so that you can raise and kind of lower this thing after it's up in the air. So, my jack won't go underneath the differential, so I'll have to go on the axle a little off center, which I'm not too happy about that, but we'll see what that does. Make sure you block the front so your cart doesn't go taking off rolling on you. So the instructions say, take the tire off. Go figure. Once we do that, loosen up U-bolts on the passenger side. Place the jack under the rear end. Jack is required to lower the rear end to complete the following steps. On the driver's side, completely remove nut from shock and U-bolts. Retain shock bushing and nut. I guess that's if you're going to reuse those. I'm replacing all that. So, all right, let's pull the tire off. So they're saying to loosen up the bolts, not take them all the way off, but loosen up the bolts on the shock and underneath there. These don't appear to be too rusted, so I'm not going to worry about spraying them down. Let's see if I can hold this. There we go. All right. That came off. All right, so we're not going to use the U-bolt again. Take that off. And I need to get in there and get rid of that too, but so this ends up going on top of that, but you have to just you have to take it off from the back. So again, we're probably 14 millimeter. Seems to be their favorite size. You're gonna have to take it completely off. Yeah, the instructions said just take off one, but if you want to get it to the top half of that, you're going to have to. Oh, it does say both. Never mind. It says both. Probably not recommended, but you know, it happened. Okay, I don't think I loosened the other side enough. Or wait a minute, yeah, I can lower it. What am I thinking? Lower it down. Whoa, here we go. All right, got that down. Go lower than that. So basically you're gaining a, what they call spring over lift, plus the little block that it gives us. And I think I'm gonna wait to tighten those up. Okay, so they recommend that you make sure this angle is going forward. So will it fit? It should fit right inside. There we go. Fits right inside the original. Cool. And then these plates are going to be where your shocks are going to mount. And I'm going to have to go ahead and change those. So in order to get to that bolt easier, you just pull this wheel well out, and there's 2 bolts that go through. You got the nuts on the back you have to hold, but one there, and then it's still held in place by some little clips, but that gets it out of the way so you can go ahead and change it out. All right, so the jack in the center of this thing was not working because I was trying to get this. You have this little pin here that's got to go through that hole in the middle of that. So now I need to move the whole thing forward somehow. Don't do that. All right, got that centered. So now you have this top bracket, which fits on here, and that's for your new shock support. Okay, so this little plate here goes up underneath here, and that nut kind of fits right up in there. And then I think, yeah. So what that's basically doing is it gives it somewhere to center this plate, because that used to be where the shock did mount. So you're using this to center that on that. Okay, so then there are these big honking bolts, 1/2-inch bolts. So we're gonna drop those through on each side. And then that'll allow us to put the centering plate that we just talked about on there. And then we can bring the old plate in. And that's really So that hole may not be big enough. It needs to be cleaned out. That hole's not big enough to get that 1/2-inch bolt in, so we're gonna have to drill it out. So now you can see how that centering plate kind of mounts on there. Now we just need to tighten this setup and move on to the other side. There we go. And now everything is where it's supposed to be. And except for the wrench I was just using, now we can tighten it up. Excellent. Don't get carried away. Did it again. So you got to do it a little at a time. So we snug this one up. That's snug. And we come over here. Get that one on pretty good. Okay, that's 50. I think I'm comfortable with 50 pounds. Yep, we're comfortable with that. All right, finished on this side. So that's kind of how it looks when it's all finished. On the other side. Well, there she is, all done up. Yeah, I got stock rims and tires on her now, but you know, a little at a time. You ain't got to go crazy. There's the front bumper that I made. Got a couple of touch-ups I need to do. A little more paint on it, but other than that, I like it. Shocks are gonna make a difference because this thing was hopping around like a jackrabbit because the shocks were completely gone and kind of rigged up. But anyway, well, that's all for today. Hope you liked the episode. Make sure you subscribe and like below, and we'll see you next time.